idea what he's going to say, but every time he spoke, I found it fascinating. I want to talk about mobile and social here, and that one other thing we emailed about. In fact, those three things.
Okay. Well, congratulations again, Mike.
The stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me. I know this is a very important conference. What I wanted to talk about a little bit was what I think is going to happen next. It seems to me that we're at yet another one of those variation points in technology where something interesting is about to happen. And if you think about it, this audience, what you're all doing and so forth, represents another transition in the way people will use information and use computers to make amazing things happen. I'm trying to think about how to express this. I think one term I would suggest for you is what we're really doing is building an augmented version of humanity. That fundamentally what we're doing, we're basically getting computers to help us do the things that we're not very good at, and humans are already helping computers do the things they're not very good at. So in theory, the combination of the two can produce some really new experiences. So if you think about it, the longer term goal is actually a little different from what we normally talk about. It's really about having people be happier. That in fact, the use of computers, the use of the information, the use of all the things that we're all building can make us all have better, more productive, more fun, more entertaining lives. And that to me is the opportunity that is really before us. There are lots and lots and lots of data points that suggest this. 40% of internet users around the world spend 13 hours or more around online. It's interesting that the 2009 word of the year, according to the New Oxford Dictionary, was unfriendly. Right? They're all now using this technology in this very fundamental way. And what's happening is that there's three trends that are accelerating. The sum of them is driving this enormous phenomena that we see here today and that we see around the world. Every one of you has a smartphone. It turns out it's the defining and iconic device of our time. What's interesting about smartphones is that within 2 years, smartphones will surpass PC sales. We're already seeing a very, very strong accelerated growth there. And mobile is a larger market in a lot of ways. I like to think of it as your strategy should be mobile first. Indeed, most of the companies that are previewing here, 25 or so over the next 2 days, are fundamentally mobile-centric in some very fundamental way. And in fact, mobile web adoption, which is one way of measuring this, is occurring 8 times faster than the equivalent point with a personal computer 15 years ago. And so it gives you a sense of the scale that we're operating. It's why everybody's so tired. It's why everybody's so frazzled. It's because it's such a larger market. And we're in a situation where we have pervasive connectivity. It's no longer the case that your music player can avoid being connected to a Wi-Fi network. A music player by itself, which has stored music on it, is not nearly as interesting as a music player that has stored music and has the ability to interact with the music that's available to it in real time and around it. And we take this for granted, but it's worth saying that in the next year, in the United States and in some other countries, the rollout of LTE, as it's called, will occur across many cities from a number of vendors. Now, LTE, which stands for long-term evolution, is a 50 megabit spec, and indeed it's been tested at that, and the expected average performance will be between 8 to 10 megabits. Wow. And what are you going to do with 8 to 10 megabits? Well, I'm sure not only will we soak it up, but we'll come up with other ideas, because that's what drives the innovation cycle. And I remember thinking if I could just get to 1 megabit, that it would all be so different. In the case of other countries, South Korea, for example, has just set a goal of having 1 gigabit per second to each and every inhabitant by the year 2050. Finland established a national law that said that it was a right of every Finn to have 100 megabits by the year 2013. So other countries are even farther ahead of us in this. This has a lot of, again, implications because it means that you're always connected, you're always online. One of the estimates is that there are 35 billion devices and so forth. And by the way, they're in cars and sensors and medical devices and so forth and so on, and everywhere you can possibly imagine. So the combination of pervasive connectivity in these mobile devices is backed up by cloud computing. Many of you are working in cloud computing. We've worked on it as an industry for a very long time. What does it really mean to have cloud computing? I'll give you a simple example. We can now demonstrate and are in the process of getting ready to ship products which allow you to speak in English and have it come out of the other end of the phone in another language, for example, German. Now, how does that actually work? Does your phone do all that work, and your phone is so incredibly powerful that it knows how to go from 1 to 100 other languages? Of course not. All the phone is doing is it's taking your voice, digitizing it, and sending it through the network to a server. That server is doing a speech-to-text translation, which is relatively well done these days. We can then statistically translate the text to text from one language to another, and then we go through a voice synthesizer, this again on the server, and do it, and come back and give it to the other phone and speak in the other language. Now, to me, this is the stuff of science fiction. You know, oh my God, that we could actually do this. And the fact that this can be done in a half a second, a quarter of a second, which we think is too long, by the way, by thousands of computers in a server room far, far away, is immaterial to the person who's just trying to communicate with the person who doesn't speak their own language. So to me, cloud computing can be understood as the magic behind what the phones can actually do. And cloud computing and phones here means tablets and so on and so on. And for me, cloud computing will fundamentally be expressed not in the way that we used to talk about it, which has to do with web services and so forth, but rather in these new services that make your life just work and work in a really interesting way. There are lots and lots of other examples of what cloud computing can do, but one way to think about it is you've got a mobile device and you've got a supercomputer, and the two are connected by this pervasive network, and that's what all of us are building. Now this concept of making humans better is not a new concept. It's one that's been around for a long time. In 1990 in Comdex, Bill Gates talked about information at your fingertips, all the information that someone might be interested in, including information they can't even get today. And what happened? Why did it take 20 years to get there? Well, we had to build all the infrastructure. We had to actually build the servers, build the cloud computing, build the standards, do all of the issues around collaborative filtering, all of the underlying AI research that was necessary to do this. So 20 years later, that vision is very much a reality. And if you think about it, it's not just the hearing and the speaking that I was talking about, there's also understanding. And we can now get, with modern AI techniques, to things which look awfully a lot like real understanding. And of course, they really aren't. Their computers are not the same thing as people, and so forth and so on. So what is driving Google to try to do this? Why is this important? This vision, I think, is now well accepted and exciting, and so forth and so on. Well, one way to think about it is we want to give you your time back. That in an information-centric world, you have two problems. You have this overload of information, and you have too much to do. So in one sense, giving it to you quicker, right, speed matters. Never underestimate the importance of speed and fast. Really does pay back in terms of your life. It also means that you can use the services faster, you can learn more things, and so forth and so on. But there's another and rather paradoxical point that although we talk about the speed of computers and Moore's law and so forth in these networks, there's another explosion, which is the explosion of information. And that this explosion of information is so profoundly large, it's so much larger than anybody ever expected, that you need some help navigating. And ultimately, search engines and the other knowledge engines that everybody is building will morph over time into things which help you figure out what you should be consuming, what information you should care about right now. So in our case, with search, we do more than 2 billion searches a day. Think about the scale of that. And of course, we care about the time for this. We did, it's interesting, there's a quote from Linus Pauling, satisfaction of one's curiosity is one of the greatest sources of happiness in life. And indeed, much of Google seems to be about that. And we make lots and lots of improvements with this. The most recent one was Google Instant, which people know about. And you sit there and you go, well, why is Google Instant so important? Why do we spend so much money and time on it? Because it shaves a couple seconds off of the whole query cycle. And a couple seconds off of that many different people really makes a huge difference in terms of human productivity. We have one of the largest databases of information in the world, which we've engineered and which is very, very difficult technologically in order to house all of that information and ready for more. So where do we go next with search? Well, you've got personal contacts, personal emails, personal network of people and your relationships to them. And with your permission, and I need to say that about 500 times, with your permission, we can actually search and index that information and make all of these answers so much better. The next step after that is obviously autonomous search. This is searches that are occurring while you're not even doing searching. For me, I like history. Here I am in San Francisco. As I walk down the streets, I want my my mobile device in this case, to tell me what happened, where it's going, so forth and so on. Tell me things that I don't know. Tell me things that I would be interested in. Think of it as a serendipity engine. And think of it as a new way of thinking about traditional text search, where you don't even have to type. We're also trying to understand what you need when you search. You know, when you say, what's the weather like? What you really are asking is, well, should I wear a raincoat or should I water the plants? And we can, with improvements in algorithms and more information with your permission and so forth, we can get closer to being able to answering the question that you really ask. And we're also thinking about other forms of specialized searches.